mean, right.
Right, so we're live now. Let's go for it. You know what? Give me
Press
a sec. Just
press the jingle, Dan.
Talk amongst yourselves for about 20 seconds. Have you noticed Steve's the only one that's got a beard now?
I was just going to comment on that because I've been watching you guys, and you were all bearded, and I feel like I was going to get left out. But maybe you shaved in preparation to receive me, just to make me feel a little bit more welcome.
Very possibly.
Well, yeah.
I'm envious, really. I couldn't grow a beard even if I tried, to be honest. It's just not in my DNA.
Right. We're ready to go.
Hello, we are the Edufuturists. I'm Dan Fitzpatrick.
I'm Ben Whitaker.
And I'm Stephen Hope.
The podcast by educators, for educators, the Edufuturists podcast.
Welcome, and we are recording live again. Don't forget to ask your questions and make comments in the YouTube chat live or by replying on Twitter. If you're listening or watching live recording, you can also leave us a comment on Twitter, YouTube, or leave a review on your podcast app.
Yeah, go check out some of our amazing previous episodes. We've had people like Lord Jim Knight, David Price, Professor Stephen Heppel, Bob Harrison, Rachel Cotup, all recent guests. So go check that out. Talking about what else at the minute, but education in these unprecedented times. I've never used that word unprecedented so many times.
It's an unprecedented word in your vocabulary.
Sounds like the daily update.
What, you saying I should be Prime Minister, Steve?
No, what we're saying is you should be in place of a Prime Minister. Anyway, so don't forget you can listen to all of our...
If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, subscribe.
We're a pro podcast, everyone. You can listen to all of our other 140 odd episodes in the back catalogue at edufuturists.com and subscribe with your podcast app. We've got a free Transform online learning series that you can go to edufuturists.com/transform. So today we're joined underneath me, I think, wherever there, we've got Kevin. Kevin is a Cambridge educated dad of 2 kids, passionate about developing soft skills in the next generation. He quit his job leading the UK division of an education publishing company to found www.KidCoach.App in the background. And it's a conversational tool that empowers parents to help their kids think more creatively and analytically while developing social and emotional skills all at home.
Yeah, this focus on soft skills is really important to Kavin and why he set up KidCoach. Having been inspired, like many of us, by Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk from all those years ago, the premise is simple cards with a skill focus, a question with guidance for parents and coaches, and some prompts if they're stuck.
You can contact him and connect with him on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can find out all about Kavin's work at KidCoach.App. And he tweets at Kavin Wadhar. Is that right? Hopefully.
Kavin Wadhar, yeah. But both my first name and surname are difficult to pronounce.
No, I'm terrible, to be fair. I've actually, that's the best I've ever done, so I'm really proud of myself. What about you guys?
He struggles staying Stephen sometimes.
I do indeed.
Play a jingle, Dan.
Are we done? Sorry, stopped.
The podcast by educators, for educators, the Edufuturists podcast.
So, Kevin, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you on. I know that your passion around soft skills is going to be amazing for our podcast today. And I know that some of our guests are talking about character education and the importance of that as well. So some of the people that are in the chat comments will get onto some of that stuff as well today. So thanks very much for joining us. I think it's really important at this time that we're in now at the moment to help parents and those people who are educating people at home to think about things other than a mastery curriculum or you must know this for that exam and rote learning. So maybe give us a little bit of where it came from, why, and then we can get into the ins and outs of what KidCoach.App is.
Yeah, amazing. No, thanks. I mean, before we get into it, just to say thank you so much for even inviting me. I'm dead chuffed to use a northern vernacular.
Yes.
I was browsing through your previous guests, right, and I was ever more nervous because I saw notable educationalists and professors and lords and OBEs, and I was like, It's just little old me. Why on earth are they talking to little old me? So I'm dead chuffed.
What, you
And
mean
yeah,
you're not a lord?
I'm not a lord. No, was that
Ion? I thought we were only doing lords now.
Kick
Is
him
that
out.
wrong in the
Kick
note?
him out.
He
got
ticked
your
the box. You know when you can put
certificate,
Mr.
Karen.
Mrs. I think he's put that box in. He's put, it's like I do. I put doctor in just to make myself feel a bit special. I haven't got one. I made it on my own computer, but to be fair, he's in.
I shouldn't open my mouth, should I? Silly old me. But no, seriously, thank you. And I hope it'll come across. But I'm really passionate about this stuff. Ben, I met you at the Bet conference in January. You know, back in the day, we were allowed to like go around and meet people in places. And then we kind of got chatting, and you invited me on this. So yeah, soft skills. I mean, what to say? I mean, I mentioned Ken Robinson there. He talks about how important they are. Loads of people talk about how important they are. You know, awful lot of literature. We can get into later what we actually mean by soft skills, because it can be a bit of a wishy-washy term, and it goes by other kind of names as well. But overall, I just feel that, you know, smashing your kind of maths, English, and science just doesn't matter as much nowadays as it will be to, you know, think well, work with people well, manage yourself well, which I think are the three components of soft skills. And particularly in the future, right? Like, it's already a gap now. Again, lots of literature, the Future Skills Report, talk about soft skills gap like right now, but winding the clock forward 15, 20 years time, when our kids start working, the gap is only going to have increased. And so I'm passionate to kind of help do, you know, my little bit to you know, close that gap and really get kids ready for the future, which will kind of, you know, impact their happiness and success. The family sort of defines that for that child.
Can I jump on 2 points straight away? One is in terms of softer skills, and I know that it's always been called that and everything else. Do you think that actually less emphasis is put on it because we call it that softer skill? And do you think of rebranding? That's the first kind of discussion point. But the second one is, I think it's really relevant that what you just talked about, that we're in the period, and I've just been having a massive amount of conversations with where I work today in regards to some of our students are coming out of this lockdown, and there's been an article to then say we're more anxious and lower mood than we ever have been in terms of as UK and worldwide. What kind of skills development in terms of resilience, well-being, and all of those emphasis will we put on for education at all levels come September, do we think?
Yeah, no, two great questions. So on the first one about the branding of soft skills and the label we put on it, and maybe is that why it's not getting the attention it deserves? Partly, you know, what I've heard is that boys in particular don't take well to soft skills because it's seen as a bit of a flaky, wishy-washy term. They prefer, you know, hard, macho, technical skills, kind of get your screwdriver and stuff. Like, I think maybe partly, but I think probably the bigger reason, it depends on the country, but here in the UK, is Ofsted, right? And is the framework and the regulation that schools are held to. And it's not necessarily that schools don't want to do this stuff, and they're increasingly doing it more and more. And some schools sort of more than others. And Robinson talks about the Grange School, right, in the north of England, where every student kind of essentially has a job in a town, in a make-believe town, and they're kind of simulating what it would be like in the real world. And that's fantastic for immersive soft skill development, as kind of a leading example there. The School 21 in London, which does something similar too. So it happens in pockets, but I think on the whole, kind of some schools' hands are tied in terms of the kind of what they have to speak to in terms of Ofsted, like the budget issues, you know, well documented, and they have £5,000 per kid roughly. But I do want to kind of, you know, stress, I think they want to and they see the value of it. It's just like they can't always, and there I think there's more role for parents to sort of jump in and plug the gap and kind of have more of that integrated learning between school and home, and that's my focus, kind of, you know, empowering parents to do this. So I think if we didn't call it soft skills, if we call these like super duper skills that mean you're going to be awesome at Fortnite, something like that, that would resonate more. I still think there would be an issue. I still think it would get undertaught and underdeveloped. Did I answer your first point?
It did indeed, yeah.
And your second point, like, which I knew this would happen. I knew if I kind of gave it a long answer, I'd totally forget what your second question was.
I'll throw it out there again. So we've just talked about the softer skills. And I've just been in quite a few conversations today where we're talking about what do we do for those students that have been out of education, been at home, isolated, they're going to come back to education. It might be the fact that that might be the first time they've been back in an organisation or an education provider since the lockdown. What do we do with when we're not focused on league tables and we're not focused on that element around resilience, getting students to be creative, critical thinkers, and all those kind of skills that we just talked about, and also focus on mental health for those students to ensure that that is a focus to get them back into learning as well.
Yeah, so it'll be important, won't it? Whenever they do get back into school, then it'll be a phased approach probably for them to acclimatise. So I've just started a position as a governor at a local primary school. And we had a meeting yesterday where exactly this topic came up. And the point made there was that we won't be able to hit the ground running. Right? Thinking about, let's say everybody went back 1st of September, just for argument's sake, like we won't be able to hit the ground running and do exactly what was planned for in the curriculum. That there'll need to be some sort of warm-up period, sort of a readjustment period, particularly if the kind of social distancing measures still in place. So first of all, I think targets need to be relaxed somewhat. And this, as a governor, this is one thing that we're supportive of. The rules of the game have changed, and so let's kind of let's slightly sort of be flexible, right, with what we expect when kids do return to school. In the process of kind of getting them ready, I think there's stuff we can be doing, right, to address the mental health, the well-being kind of points. I really feel that there's things that we can be doing at home with the kids, and again, the parent power here is huge, and I can speak to that a little bit more. I was actually just writing some questions on this topic just today. Very much mind. But Ben, you were gonna say
something. So I think the key element here for me is I'm guessing that you must be a homeschool extraordinaire, because I am absolutely not. I feel like I can speak to secondary school students, I can speak to FE students, adults, and hold their attention no issue. That's not well, I don't want to say no issue. I do have issues, but you know what I mean. I've got 2 kids at home that I'm trying to homeschool alongside doing my work. I'm having to set them challenges, and these are the 5 things. You need to do 5 things today. Let's agree what you're going to do, and we're agreeing projects and this and that and the other. But one of the things that I'm conscious of is my role as a parent and the role of the teacher. And regardless of the situation that we're in now, and the fact that parents have become teachers, this element of the role of the parent, and how you as a parent have decided that want to have an input into your children's lives and their own development not more than just, but we have a responsibility ethically and the relationship development and social interaction and all the stuff that we do that, and we send them to school to learn. What you're saying is that parents can do the teaching and the learning as well. Am I right on that?
We as parents can do a form of teaching and learning. Clearly, we can't replace what schools do, right? Because teachers are qualified, sort of in their craft, and have been for many years, and they have kind of certain resources and infrastructure at school that we can't hope to replace at home. And to your point, Ben, we've got day jobs, right? So we don't have an awful lot of time to devote. So the parameters are completely different, clearly. But when we think about sort of teaching and learning, grooming our kids, I think there's some stuff we are actually well qualified to do, right? So when you think about it, this might sound trivial, but I think it's kind of important, right? We're adults, first of all, right? And any adult talking to any child, already you have so much kind of life experience under your belt and wisdom to impart. Already that connection is valuable. Secondly, we have the smallest class sizes in the world. Teachers would love to be able to teach us 1, 2, 3, 4 kids. I don't know how many kids you have, but let's say sort of 2 kids is the average, right? Tiny class sizes, so we can afford to give that kind of detail and attention and sort of personalized learning. And that doesn't mean we have to spend hours doing it, right? Even sort of 5-10 minutes of input, of a good conversation, interesting question, interesting discussion, activities that you might set, for example, like what you said, Ben. Even just 10 minutes of that one-on-one arguably is the same as, I don't know, a 45-minute class with a group of 30 kids. So it doesn't have to be intense, is what I'm saying as a parent. And the type of teaching you do can obviously be, it needs to be quite different, more discussion-based questions where you can just sort of chat through things. That's my angle.
Yeah, and I love it. And I love the fact the idea of parents as educators is a key component here. And the fact is that some of us will think, who aren't teachers, will think, I don't have that much I can impart. But what you're saying is there's wisdom and experience and things. Somebody once said to me, you either learn from your mistakes or you learn from other people's mistakes. They're the two things you learn from. And so it's much easier and less harmful to learn from somebody else's mistakes. So there's something really characteristic. So can I ask us, so for those people who are maybe in this call or watching this who don't understand what we mean by that phrase, character education or soft skills, what do you mean by it? What are you trying to develop in young people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I knew this question would come up, right? Like what is soft skills? So one place to start as typical, right, is Wikipedia. Right, so I've got the Wikipedia definition here. So let me read that, and then I'll give you kind of my interpretation of that. So Wikipedia says soft skills are a combination of people skills, social skills, communication skills, character or personality traits, attitudes, career attributes, social intelligence, and emotional intelligence. This is quite a lot of stuff, isn't it? I think the key point there, though, is it's none of the academic stuff, right? None of the sort of the maths, the science, the English. No Pythagoras' theorem or learning the characters in Macbeth or the boiling point in ethanol. All that stuff is not part of soft skills. For me, more kind of simply put, because simple is good. It's three things for me, right? So firstly, it's sort of thinking skills. Secondly, it's sort of people skills. Thirdly, it's sort of self-management skills. So thinking skills, critically thinking, problem solving. Can you find new angles around a problem? The second one, people skills. Are you good with people? Can you communicate well? Do you understand social dynamics? Do you have empathy to how others are feeling? And the third piece, more self-management skills. So this is where resilience comes in. Can you manage your own mental health? And then also, are you organized and productive? Yeah, can you manage yourself, essentially? So those are the three things for me. I think, look, there's lots of different ways to develop them. And you can also sort of weave them into the academic stuff, academic lessons. You can send kids to sort of clubs and camps, but also crucially, my point is I think you can develop them at home with well-chosen conversations.
It's brilliant, isn't it, that we're actually focusing on this? Because I think in the past it's kind of been like, well, those who got it at home got it at home. Those who who were able to pick up these skills probably more easily than some other students just ran with it, and that's kind of how probably our parents, our grandparents, that's how they did it. And if you were able to pick up those skills, then that was good for you. But there is I'm a careers lead at a school in the northeast of England, and one thing I hear quite a bit is that there's a real dearth of these skills at the moment. Why do you think that might be?
Yeah, so where are kids going to learn these skills, right? Either at school or at home, or anything they go to in between, like if there's some sort of clubs or camps or drama clubs and music classes and scouts and that kind of stuff. Those are the venues through which they'll learn these. I don't think this is something you can sort of learn on the internet yourself. You can't sort of read a textbook on critical. Well, you can read a textbook on critical thinking, but in terms of to really develop the skills, I think it needs to be a bit more immersive. So why are there your question was like, why are there pockets where these skills aren't being like?
Yeah, just one thing I hear quite a bit is that a lot more students who are coming out of the education system at 18 or 16 and going into, say, apprenticeships aren't having these skills. So I meet regularly with employers around the northeast of England, and one of the big things they always say, and I've mentioned it on this podcast before, and don't worry, I'm not going to tell the story again because I think I've mentioned it a few times.
Tell it.
Tell it.
No, it's just, but it can be boiled down to the fact that there's employers out there are screaming out for employees who have these skills, and the vibe I'm kind of picking up is that they're not there anymore, whereas in the past they were. People would even just down to being able to make eye contact with someone when you're having a conversation with them, or being able to hold a conversation with someone. A lot of employers are saying that even these most basic of human skills are lacking. So yeah, I guess my question was, why do you think that we might be now in an age where those skills are lacking more than they ever have been?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, frankly. I don't think there's also like a silver bullet answer to that question. If that really is true, that these kind of basic communication skills are lacking so extensively. I mean, what is certainly true is that, you know, there are deprived areas of the UK where we have kind of struggling families, and kind of school systems which are sort of running to stand still, right? They're just doing the best they can in order to kind of keep students afloat and keep them learning the basics, and probably don't have an awful lot of time to enrich them around that. And then when you think about the parents, sort of the household environment some of these kids are growing up in, they're challenging, right? And you sort of wonder what kind of level of conversation is happening there. And that's where, you know, that's something I would like to try and help level up. You know? So I think part of the issue there is potentially parent confidence. You know, back to Ben's point, sort of we're not teachers, especially nowadays with feeling that pressure, right? We're not teachers, we can't do this, but there is things we can do. That's a message I'm trying to get out there. Part of the challenge is just time. I don't care kind of what your household income is. Like, everybody has busy lives doing the jobs that are important for them, and probably parents don't have hours and hours and hours to spend with their kids, where 200 years ago probably we did. So we need something that's kind of more short form and kind of quick and snappy, but still high yield. You know, some of these skills, I think, you know, I think a meta skill is around just communication, and you mentioned it there, Dan, as well. You know, I was talking to a teacher recently. She's a assistant head at a academy in London, and they have, you know, pretty disadvantaged kids in there, but actually they do really well as a school. One thing that they really focus on is just communication and conversation. And she said to me is, I remember it quite clearly because it's quite a quotable thing, so I'll just quote it here. She said, you can really tell which kids have dinner table conversations at home and which don't. It's
100%.
And so, yeah, and that's the other thing, as I've been working with parents, they're like, oh yeah, the stuff you're doing, this was great for dinner table conversations. Like they see that as a nice venue. There's even, to do a shout out for somebody else, there's the Family Dinner Project.org, I think is the website, the Family Dinner Project.org. They talk a lot about this kind of stuff as well. And there's a nice quote on their website which says, a well-worded question is the best way to connect after a long day, which really resonated with me. So I think it's that conversation in the home, which probably the volume on that has been turned down in recent years. You know, and maybe kind of social media and all these devices that kids have their heads stuck in hasn't helped, right? So if we can up that conversation at home, then I think longer term that that has to be a positive thing.
It's really interesting. A lot of schools that hit the headlines in terms of new ways of teaching. I'm thinking schools like Dixon's Trinity in the north, and then Michaela School in London. They put a lot of emphasis on community dining, so their lunch times, their dinner times aren't just kids go into a canteen, grab their food, sit down with their mates, have their food, and then off out into the yard. But they go so far as to give them conversation starters. So they have to, during lunch, they have to talk about, and it's not just something like talk about EastEnders from last night. It's talk about Plato's Republic, like because they might have just been studying it in a philosophy lesson, and it's real intellectual stuff that's going to build that ability. And I had the chance to visit Michaela last year and joined them for one of those community meals, and it was quite impressive, actually. It was quite impressive to see it. And then also things like the way when they would give something called appreciations, where students were invited to stand up and give an appreciation to a member of staff or another student, and just the way the students spoke. So it was very, very clear that students weren't allowed to just get up and mumble. They had to stand up straight, and they'll be told in front of in front of the whole dining hall. Speak clearer, please. And it just, yeah, what you were saying there really hit home with that. I think there's a lot of schools moving to try and get these in there outside of the classroom within school. Go on,
I
Ben.
think as well, if I can just before you jump on, Kevin, I think when I was at school, I went to a grammar school. I was really fortunate, got an assisted play scholarship to go to a grammar school, and that was exactly what happened. Like the teachers would sit on the table at the top, very much Hogwartsy. Even the dining hall looked like Hogwarts. The teacher would sit on the dining table at the top. We would all be sat. We'd have a meal, and then there'd be an expectation that you would. That was part of your education. It was all part of the formality. You were taught certain etiquette and the stuff that goes. I'm not saying we should have that, but I totally agree with what you're saying, Dan. I think that had a huge impact on that understanding of what the dinner table's about.
Yeah, chatting around the dinner table, right? And the nice thing about it is it's like a low stakes environment. You know, imagine sort of speaking in public or having to present something to your peers at school. These are all kind of high stakes and nervy moments. But just at home, just chatting with your mum and dad, who normally you have a great relationship with, it's so low stakes, right? You can try things out. If you start a line of kind of thought and it becomes a dead end, or you just said something silly, you know, big deal. Like you get to fail, and as we know, that's what leads to success. That conversation at home is really important. And the other factor around this is just the time that kids spend at home. You know, I saw a data point on this the other day, and it kind of shocked me. And I sort of did the maths on it. I thought, oh, no, that's actually true. So, which is, let me just ask you, chaps. So, if you think about the average kid, exclude their sleeping hours, right? So, just the hours they're awake. What percentage do you think is spent at school, like across the year? What percentage is spent at school of their waking hours? 70, 50, 30, 20?
A third. So
yeah, I'd say about just over a third.
I'd say 75%.
Yeah, so it's about 15%.
oh wow.
15.
Yeah, it's low, isn't it? It's really low, and the reason is it's their school holidays. The holidays, they're at home, right? And then obviously evenings and weekends they're at home as well, or at least they're not at school. Normally they're at home. And I mean, schools play a massive role. Don't get me wrong, right? That 15% of the time is huge, right? Imagine they didn't go to school at all. What would happen? So I don't mean to sort of trivialize the impact of schools. I just mean to sort of remind parents probably that, you know, the other 85% is at home, and right, we don't have to be like spending every single second with them, but it's just such an oasis of time in there, really, when you think about it, to have like these 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. We just shape and mold our kids so much.
I think there's an element of that. Every experience is a learning experience, and I do hate those parents that are like, what can we learn from this? How does this is going to make us better in the world and all that kind of stuff? I think that sometimes goes too far. But I think you're right. I try and do that with my girls. I think sometimes trying to get them to think about. So I remember one thing that's really impacted my girls has. We sponsor some children in Rwanda, and the names are very similar to my girls, and that's had a massive impact on them. They ask about us writing them letters and sending them birthday cards and all that kind of stuff, as well as on top of obviously sponsoring them. But it's that whole understanding of like, when you waste your food, those people don't have it. Nima and Bonnie, or the children that we sponsor, they don't have that same thing. And there's a learning experience all the time. They see homeless people and they're like, Dad, why does that happen? Why? Mum's a police officer. Their mum's a police officer. They're like learning, why do people commit crime? Those kind of things. I'm not saying that it's all about learning. I think we're going to want to get into your app at some point as well, and we'll talk about the work that you do with that. But
just before we do that, I'm going to show you just at the bottom of my little. I don't know if you can see that, but like every moment is a coaching moment. Is because you said
okay. I didn't even nick that.
I really believe that. You know, I had, just to share one quick story. I had a moment like that with my daughter recently. We're reading Aesop's fables, the wind and the sun. If you chaps know that, but like real quick, like there's a man walking along. He's got a coat on, and the wind and the sun, they kind of have a bet who can get the man to take his coat off first. So the wind has a go, and he blows really, really hard, but the man gets really cold and just hugs his coat tighter. And then the sun has a go, and he kind of shines really warmly, and of course the man gets hot and takes his coat off. So my daughter afterwards like couldn't understand. She said, but why, Daddy? You know, like the wind is really strong. Surely you can just force the man to take his coat off. And that just got us into a really great discussion about influence and persuasion and motivation. And because of course the moral of that story is, you know, people do what they feel like doing. It has to come from within, right? You can't force it. And so just like little moments like that, and actually that inspired me a little bit to kind of do what I'm doing. But I completely agree, Ben. Like it doesn't have to be sort of sit down, here's an app, let me ask you this. It doesn't have to be that kind of sort of rigid and formal, but just in the moment. If you're looking for it, there can always be these kind of coaching moments or teaching moments. Just don't annoy your child by doing it every 5 minutes like I do.
I think just before Stephen, I know you've got a point. Can I just jump in first?
No.
All right, you go.
Yeah, go on.
So, I know that there's a phrase that's on your website that I really liked that says, as machines do more for us, the human ability to be creative will arguably become our single biggest strength. The idea that machines are going to replace the majority of our functional algorithmic systems process, because computers are better at process. We heard that conversation with some of our guests last week. Computers are better at that than us, and they will become even better at that than us. So actually it's the creativity, it's that curiosity, it's that ability to connect and communicate, which is the things that's going to differentiate.
Yeah,
Steve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, and so I in a demographic where a high percentage of our students come from lowest 5 or 10% backgrounds in the UK. So we've got real deprivation, and people that struggle. Family lives are very varied, and they might not be getting this support from parents or guardians. Those parents might be working 2 jobs, so they're not seeing the kids. They might not have that stable home life. In terms of if you can't use it, is there a mechanism where we can start to bring that into schools more, or what could that look like? Because I'm just thinking for those students that we don't want to leave behind the disadvantaged, I think, in terms of these skills, not only education, but these rounder skills, the holistic approach to learning as well.
Yeah, that's fair. And for those children, the school becomes ever more important, doesn't it? Because it's sort of foundational. So, you know, there is some stuff that's happening, like philosophy for children is quite sort of widely used in schools. So philosophy for children, right, is so, you know, they pose questions like why can't you have elephants as pets, or what is there more future ahead of us or past behind us, or if I steal $1 million, £1 million, am I a millionaire? Yeah, questions like that, which just kind of get kids talking and thinking. So philosophy for children is certainly hearing more about that being used at schools. I think if there does become some sort of program for parents at home that does kind of take off, my thing or somebody else's, like, I'm sure some schools would be interested in applying that in the right mechanism at schools. You know, these are integrated in environments. It's not like what you do with parents at home can never work at schools. Like there's, you know, you can cross the boundaries like we are at the moment, right? All these kind of teaching resources that they use, like Twinkle, are now being used by parents at home, right? So you can go the other way too. I'm not sure there's like a great answer for what you pose, Steve, because that is an issue, right? The sort of the equity is an issue. But I think what can also sort of maybe hopefully help and inspire these kids is that if we have sort of more role models stepping forward saying, you know, I came from this kind of background and look at what I've accomplished. You know, your Richard Bransons of the world. And, you know, entrepreneurialism is a way out of that, right? If some kids kind of get their head up and, you know, I actually don't need much to get started. And if I have a good idea and if I can communicate it well to people, and if I can kind of sell the idea to some investors and get some funding, and we're off to the races. And, you know, entrepreneurialism is one way out of that, I would suggest. I know it won't be for everybody, but there are sort of non-traditional channels as well. And, you know, I think entrepreneurs actually embody a lot of these soft skills because they have to. They're doing everything. So I'm feeling that now, actually, having sort of quit my big corporate job to suddenly having to like do everything myself. I'm like, oh my God, I need to know so much and do so much. But yeah, Steve, it's a difficult one, but I think there is some hope on the horizon there.
Cool. So let's say we because I think all of us got kids in our life, and we want to use this app with them. So how do we go about doing it? So for the parents out there, the teachers out there with kids, how do they go about using this successfully?
Yeah, so the best thing is to sort of be armed with the right questions, right? And some parents, this just occur naturally to them. Like Ben, you gave some examples, and that's it. You're off to the races. There are probably some kind of tips I could give you beyond that about sort of asking the right probing questions to keep the conversation going, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But for other parents, and certainly what I've heard a lot of is, after that busy working day, the time, energy, inspiration can be lacking. So if there's kind of a neat place to go with some kind of stimulating questions, that's helpful. That's what I'm trying to develop with KidCoach.App. So if there are any parents who are interested in checking it out, it's real simple. Just go to the website KidCoach.App, and you can get started for free. All the questions there's a lot of questions up there on the website, and the app is about to be launched. You can sign up to sort of be apprised of that. But really it's about it's about also keeping the conversation going, right? So if you like, this is your parent. As a parent, it's your chance to kind of keep saying, but why? Because our kids always say that to us, right? Like, why, daddy? Why, daddy? Why, daddy? This is your turn, right? And that's kind of like the basic way of keeping any conversation flowing, to kind of get kind of more out of them. So if you do sort of stumble across a natural coaching moment, see that homeless person on the street, like what Ben was saying, you get into a conversation, go, but why in that box? Like, what are the other options out there for them? So whys, whats, and how ifs actually are also always good. But if any parent would like sort of a prepackaged way just to kind of apply immediately, then KidCoach.App.
Should we have a look at it? I've actually opened it up, and an example that I liked earlier. I haven't used it with my kids yet. But is that all right if I'll share my screen?
You're going to embarrass me by the sort of the amateurish website that I have at the moment, but.
So are we all right seeing that now? So can we all see that? Yeah. So the example that I really like is this one. 10 different things you could use a cup for. So that's not necessarily an ethical question or something that's deeper, but if you look at the way that it works, there's a stimulus question, and then some guidance on what you could do, and then some prompts if they were stuck. Is that kind of the premise on all of them?
Yeah, exactly. And in that guidance, it really covers the why, right? So why, as you sort of, in this question, you think about all those different uses, it promotes divergent thinking. And that's kind of good for creativity. This is actually the classic question that Malcolm Gladwell uses. Yeah, he uses bricks and blankets. I use cups. It's his test for kind of initiative and divergent thinking. But yeah, that's the format. What parents say they like is that stimulus lead question, and some parents are fine with that, and that's all you need. But other parents, appreciate a bit more guidance, and particularly those prompts have stuck, right? If for the kids to go, I don't know, which I'm sure happens quite a lot. Well, what can you ask to kind of keep it going? With that particular question, one thing I like to do is sort of change the parameters a little bit. So typically kids sort of run out of ideas after sort of 3 or 4, like, to drink from, maybe to eat from. I've heard sort of trap spiders with and draw circles with, but then they kind of run out. So then you could say something like, well, what if, is that what if phrase, right? What if the cup is digital? And this has worked quite well when I've done it with kids, right? What if the cup is digital? And one girl said to me, I'd make it like an iPad was wrapped around it and put it in the middle of the table, and then we could all watch what we wanted without any fighting. Right, fair enough. And it doesn't have to make like a ton of sense, but with this question in particular, this is for creativity. Just kind of gets them thinking in new ways.
Yeah, so I think that premise around the what ifs, the how might we, and Dan's going to get annoyed when I mention this now. When me and Steve have both been to Google Innovator Academies, And the phraseology they use is based around that you wanting to define a problem. So by using the phrase of how might we, and then you talk about a problem, and then you talk about how we solve that problem. How might we solve that problem? And then they do that 10 whys and the what ifs, and I'm right. I'm just not just mumbling, Steve. It's a bit longer ago than I was, but it's that idea. He's been eating them funny pills again, but it's that based around like what ifs and the development of questioning. So do you think there's some training to be done with parents there to upskill that, or have you seen because Steve's point was valid there in terms of like what happens if you haven't got good role models at home, and that could we bring it into school but in college, but if they are competent people, got good relationship with the children, but just haven't got that ability to what if and expand things and take it forward.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's something I'm doing. So some of the parents I work with have asked for exactly that kind of guidance. So on the side of this, I'm building a little sort of supportive course, not too long, because I think you cover it quite succinctly. The whys, the what ifs, hows are important, as we just talked about. Other quick tips for any parents that are listening are to ask the child to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. So maybe it doesn't work so well with that kind of cups example, but if we just think about another one real quick, like a leadership question in there is around how do you motivate somebody, right? How do you motivate somebody? And your child might have their view, but then if you ask what would Boris Johnson say to that, or what would Donald Trump say to that, and they have probably very different leadership styles, as we know about. So, getting them to think about what other people would say, helps kind of develop perspective and keeps that conversation going. And then also another one is around sort of pros and cons and kind of grades of thinking. So this works well for like your critical thinking questions. What's a good example? Like, is a car or a helicopter better? Okay, is a car or a helicopter better? And there's no clear answer to that, because probably depends on what are you using it for. Are you optimizing for speed? Are you optimizing for comfort, for cost, and so on? And so evaluating the pros and cons of each. Right? What are the pros of going by helicopter? What are the pros of going by car? What are the cons of each of them? And then sort of linked to that, sort of developing shades of grey thinking. So whenever a child says yes or no, or kind of we should do X, we should do Y, I encourage them to explore the space in the middle. Right? So is somebody right or wrong? Well, it depends, right? There are kind of shades of grey. So like developing that kind of in between thinking as well, I think is really helpful. So whys, what ifs, hows, seek other people's perspectives, and evaluate shades of grey, evaluate sort of pros and cons to anything. A sort of, I think, standard conversational tips that any parent could use with any kid on any question, pretty much. That kind of keeps the conversation flowing and the learning happening.
So I'm interested in terms of the grand scheme of things. Then, if we think that in an ideal world, everybody and every parent goes to the app and everybody's using it absolutely successfully, what do we think? What is your vision for the impact of this going forward? Then. Yeah,
no, I'm glad you asked that. I was sort of mulling over that these last few days, actually. And by the way, it really doesn't have to be my app, right? It's just like if all kids develop these soft skills, or whatever we're going to call them, thinking skills, these people skills, these self-management skills, we just imagine that in every country, in every household, every child has the opportunity to develop these skills well, be it through the parents, or be it through school, or be it however. Just imagine the impact on society. Right? Just imagine if you have millions, billions of kids around the world who have, really big hearts, like lots of empathy for people, really nimble minds, able to think well around problems, really good sort of social citizens, able to fit in well and be leaders. It's just huge, right? I mean, I don't want to get overly kind of philosophical and kind of utopian about this, but what would it mean in terms of kind of mental health issues? They would dissolve. What would it mean in terms of kind of crime, probably that would drop because people are finding useful employment. They don't need to turn to crime. What would it mean for sort of general well-being and happiness? What would it mean for our kind of research and development and scientific kind of always pushing the boundaries as humans do? But, you know, if all these great minds are coming together and thinking and talking well together, what would that mean for that? Compared to, and I know I'm getting kind of, you know, very visionary about this, but if you just consider compared to like, what if every child around the world aced their maths exam, got an A star or whatever was equivalent, and they all knew kind of, you know, perfect algebra. The impact of that is less, right? I mean, I'm sure it's great for certain mathematicians, and maybe we develop some new branch of computer science or something. But I think if you ask that sort of, what if we all did this really well and apply it to like different sort of learning topics? But for me, it's like, what if we all nail soft skills? That's the one that is just so transformative for society in the longer term. And I suppose that's my kind of mission vision, of what kind of keeps me going. And clearly, it's not an overnight thing. But, you know, if we're sort of supporting hundreds, thousands of parents in the first year or two, then, you know, I would call that a win.
We've got a couple of questions that are coming in on the live stream, so it'd be great to just get those up, if that's all right, Kavin, just before we wrap. Because we've got a few to get through. I'll just come up with the one that's just come in from Joe Fletcher Saxon. She's got a few questions. I just put them on the screen there. So will you be carrying out any formal research around the impact? What will success with the app look like for you, and how are you going to define that success?
Yeah, great questions. So the challenge with soft skills is that it's hard to measure, isn't it? You know how well you're doing with maths because you take some exam and it kind of gives you an objective evaluation. The soft skills is a little bit harder. I mean, one of the visions, one of the ideas I have, which I need to test out a little bit more, is that it's a nice comment. Thank you, Ignite Learn It. One of the ideas is that with the sort of these question cards that exist in the app, as parents are doing them more and more, they can sort of mark off what they've done and also how well they think they've done. Let's say, you know, out of 5 stars. And so over time, you know, if enough people start using this, we will build up a bit of a picture, let's say in the UK, of the average child, and are they stronger on creativity? Are they stronger on critical thinking? Are they better on resilience, and so on and so on? So that data set in itself, albeit it's self-marked and self-scored, I think is helpful, because it might sort of help open our eyes as to kind of, well, we need to do more work on resilience rather than creativity, for example. And probably that will vary by child a little bit. In terms of kind of what business success looks like for me, you know, by the end of this year, if I've had sort of hundreds of thousands of parents at least check out the website, of which kind of, you know, a few thousand have kind of gone through the process, signed up, and are using therefore this app on a regular basis, you know, even once a week, once a day would be great, but even once a week. And I'm kind of getting good feedback, at least qualitatively, right, that this is yielding good conversations, and my child has opened up a bit to me, and I find them talking and thinking in new ways, and their grades at school have kind of started improving. And if you can have that sort of at least qualitative anecdotal feedback, that would, you know, I think that's a signal that we're on the right track. Fast forward a little bit more, like 3, 4, 5 years, I feel like there would be a data-driven way to sort of genuinely assess impact and soft skill development. I couldn't tell you exactly what that is now. I'm just too nascent. I don't want to sort of you know, commit myself to something that just isn't feasible. But for sure, we, you know, from a sort of a research-based and evidence-based approach of does this stuff work, we've very much got in mind that we do want to have proper success metrics around this.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. There's another question. I think it's quite let me just go to it. Are soft skills universal, or different cultures different? Do they have different soft skills, I think?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I know Paladea, Carlos de Paladea, how are you doing? An old colleague who is Spanish, as the name suggests. So, I mean, they would be a little bit different, wouldn't they? I'm sure. It's a good question. I don't think I've fully thought through that, to be honest. Sort of just being so sort of centered in the UK and the Anglo-Saxon world and the English language, you know, there's a certain way of thinking about soft skills, but as soon as you change the, I'm sure sort of what's relevant changes a little bit. I mean, that's something that I'd be sort of quite curious to explore more. But I'm not trying to, frankly, sort of boil the ocean at the moment and sort of try and take over the whole world, as it were. I'm happy to sort of double down on the impact in the UK and other kind of English markets, like the US in particular as well. It's a good question.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited, to be honest, to think around how it could develop in different cultures and see like there's priorities and pressures and different I suppose different emphasis in other countries as well, and other cultures. Like some cultures, it's all about academic success, isn't it? Some cultures value the level of social community and how you look after your elders and how you look after different neighbours and people in your community and stuff. So it's interesting to think actually on that level. As we kind of come to a close towards this, I'm thinking around how this develops students and parents and teachers, if we were to translate it over there, their needs around communication and around what it's going to be like in terms of articulation. And I know that when we've spoken to David Price the other week, we talked about oracy, however you want to pronounce it, the ability to be able to articulate yourself. I was in a shop today talking to an old couple that are in that shop, and they loved the fact that they had a conversation, and I was asking them about stuff and how long they'd worked in the shop and what they'd done previously and this kind of stuff. And they said, people don't talk to us anymore. They just come in, buy the stuff and go out. They don't have a conversation. And we were laughing and joking before we came on air about being northern, and we go on tube and try and say hello to people, and we're saying, hey, you all right? Hey mate, how you doing? And people look at you like you've got three heads. So long way around of saying that conversation, communication, the ability to hold a conversation and articulate your thoughts. You talk about that being a differentiator for humans and for those people that do well in life. What I read a really good book, before we go into it, called Sapiens. Loads of you have read it, and it's a great concept. Yeah. So anyway, I'll leave you to that.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, two books actually to mention. First of all, oracy is getting back on the agenda. I've been in contact with the director of oracy at Cambridge University, a chap called Neil Mercer. Who actually I'll do him a little plug. I just bought one of his books, and he's done like sort of lifetime of work and research in oracy and dialogic teaching. But yeah, it's finally back on the agenda. At School 21 in London, sort of that famous free school, they really champion oracy as well. And it makes a ton of sense, right? It shouldn't just be about numeracy and literacy, like being good at maths and being able to write words. We need to be able to speak words well as well. And this sort of live video interview is just like one example of that, right? We are fully using oracy, not so much literacy and numeracy. So yeah, that's absolutely important, and I'm glad it's kind of getting back in the spotlight. And you mentioned Sapiens. So I mean, I'm actually rereading Sapiens right now. As a quick side point, I sort of realized a while ago that sort of, you know how you read great books and you kind of keep reading new books, but some are better than others. But actually, it might be worth your time to reread really good books. Your learnings might be better as a result because you pick up more that second time round. So that's what I'm doing. And one thing I'm sort of reminded of is how, what differentiates Homo sapiens. Why did we eradicate all the other sort of Homo branches and then sort of take over the world and climb up the food chain? It wasn't because we're strong. It wasn't because we're fast. And it wasn't necessarily because we're that smart. It's just because we're able to collaborate fantastically well in groups through kind of creating shared myths, as a Professor Harari talks about it, right? The myth of this is the country of the UK. Nobody says it's the country of the UK, but because we all believe in that, we act in a certain way. Or the myth of the company, we all work for the Edufuturists. That's just completely made up, right? It's a piece of paper, but it still bonds the three of you together. The myth of a school institution. There's so many myths, right? But the myth of money, even, right? I'll give you this paper with somebody's head on it, and it's worth 10 quid. I assume that you'll give me something that's valuable in return. But it's just kind of this sort of shared myth, that collaborative, which makes us so collaborative. Was it from that book? But one example that I always quite like is nobody knows how to make a pencil. You heard that one before? nobody knows how to make a pencil. Or
No.
pick a substitute pencil for like any other like really simple object. Nobody knows how to make any simple object. Because pencil in mind, right? You got to have some people who know about lead. You got to have some people who know about like the shavings. Some people got to know about the rubber. Some people know about the assembly. Some people know about sort of the marketing of that and the distribution of that, and so on and so on. Nobody actually knows about how to make a pencil, but we have to all sort of collaborate in order to provide this very simple object even to society to benefit everybody. And that, I think, speaks to at a slightly more philosophical level, albeit, but it speaks to kind of the value of a soft skill.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, this podcast and what we do and all the different things we do is all about looking to the future of education, in order to give our kids the best chance and give students the best chances. And I think we talk about technology a lot, especially at the moment as well, because it's so at the fore with helping people learn and helping people communicate. But I think this whole area of, and I don't want to call it soft skills. I want to call it almost like human skills. Really, it's about becoming fully human, being able to communicate and be fully yourself within society. I think those skills are so much needed right now, and the work that you're doing is fantastic. So thanks for coming on and sharing that with us. We really appreciate it coming.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, chaps. I really, really appreciate it. It's great to sort of chat about this topic. It's close to my heart, and I think we will agree it's important. It's just that it's really interesting how you go about developing soft skills, and there's lots of ways, lots of kind of things already in motion. It's just that that the power of the parents to do it more at home is something that I think is maybe underutilized, and it's something that I'm hoping to inspire a little bit more. So if I managed to do that in the last hour or so, then that's. Yeah, cheers, chaps. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget, if you're listening, in just over half an hour's time, just after the clap for the NHS, we're going to be live again with Abdul Chauhan. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to be chatting to him about kind of global responses to education and in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and all about how he started off his own school. He was the CEO of a multi-academy trust. So we're going to have some great conversations there. Check out our Transform online learning series as well, which you can get at our website, edufuturists.com/transform, where we have a look at Google Meet, Google Classroom, and Google Jamboard. But yeah, I think we can go and have a break for half an hour now, lads.
Yeah, good idea. Thanks, Kavin.
Kavin,
KidCoach.App.
KidCoach.App. Cheers, guys.